Hello and welcome back. This is video 2. If you have made it this far, then you should have a video playing with a camera in front of it. You should have your butterfly animated somewhat, and you should be able to push spacebar here in the timeline and see a little bit of action going on. If you're not that far, then you should refer back to video 1. And the files for the assets for this are in the link under that video description. Should be the video right before this one. So the next thing that we want to do here is we want to finish animating our butterfly. And this is something that really only you can do, but I want to do a little bit of time here just to make sure that we are clear on how to do this, right? Because it's not easy intuitively. We learned how to keyframe things, both the position of something, right? So let's say we're going to go up to frame 90 here. We have our butterfly selected because you can tell it's got this orange outline. And we want to make sure that it is in the position we want. Hit I, location, rotation, and scale. That's how you keyframe a position. And then we also want to be able to keyframe the wing flappage. So over here, if you have your shape keys set up, you can move it, hover over the shape key value and type I, and it will change color and you will have keyframed your shape key there. So let's say that we want the butterfly to land and we want it to mess around on that flower for a little bit. It's looking for nectar. It's trying to find out if there's any good stuff to eat in there. So for a few moments, it's going to mess around on the flower. And then at some point, it's going to take off and it will have gotten over here. It will have rotated on the y-axis. It will have rotated on the z-axis. Location, rotation, and scale. It will have probably moved its wings a little bit, and so you can see what that looks like. You have to go back and forth a lot just to see how something feels, but roughly we have something happening here. So we have it getting to a position. Great. When do we want it to take off? I'm going to look at the flower it's landing on and look for a bit where it goes up. That will make it feel like the weight of the butterfly, as little as that may be, is coming off of the flower just a little bit. You see at 128, 129, the flower goes up a little bit. So I'm going to move this final keyframe before the butterfly launches to be back a little bit. Let's try that. Too early. Too late. You scroll your mouse wheel a little bit here and zoom into the timeline and get more granular with what you're viewing. And so at this point, location, rotation, scale. He's going to jump up. He won't move forward as quickly as he will move upward. And you have to look at it many, many times and kind of feel out what looks natural. So let's do the wing flapping a little bit. So when he decides he's going to take off, which is right here, I'm going to move this forward a little bit. So he jumps. He jumps, and yeah, look at that. He jumps, and then the flower goes up. Whoa. Whoa. All right, cool. So he jumps. When he jumps, his wings are going to go down. So in that same keyframe, I'm going to keyframe the wings to go down halfway, just to do a little stutter flutter there. I'll move this over here, bring them up halfway of that. Bring them down over here, so you got a big whoosh down, and that lifted him off. And then we'll raise them here. You kind of have to go back and forth a lot just to see what feels good. All right, let's check that out. Sure, that's terrible. Not bad, not too bad. We can make it better. First thing that's killing me right now is when he's on the flower, which happens at 65, he lands. It doesn't feel like he's really there. Let's go every 3 frames and make sure that the butterfly is really tracking the flower. You can just use the arrows on your keyboard to page through the frames. So I'm going to type 1, 2, 3 of the right arrow. Yeah, there it kind of looks like he doesn't. Not following the flower. I don't want to put keyframes too close together because they will, if they're too different, it'll look like the animated object does a stutter, right? If you ask it to move a lot over a very short period of time, it will feel unnatural. Sometimes you can go 6 frames or more. It all just depends on what works. But if you go back and it's not working, you can go back in between them and fix it. All right, let's check that out. Now it really looks like he bounces with the flower. The only other thing that should happen is, though, he should be rooting around in there looking for some flowery goodness. So every major keyframe, his wings should move a little. And he should move a little. He should rotate a little bit on the y-axis and just kind of move around looking for stuff, right? So let's make sure that that happens. So he lands on 65. 70, we can have him rotate on the y-axis. Let's see that. All right, his wings go down at one point here, and they go too far for interest. Yeah, see, that gave it a sharp a sharp little flutter, but it looks kind of good. All right, and he takes off here. So let's, before that, when does he flap his wings down? There. So before that, let's have his wings go down there. And up right before that to accentuate the appearance of the wings going down. Great, not too bad. Let's go back. Let's make that flutter down that lifts him off to be really significant. When should the wings go down to lift him off? There. Go down here. Let's blaze them all the way down by that point. And the previous keyframe. So there's 6 buttons here along the bottom. The furthest left one takes you back to the beginning of the video. These 2 play and rewind, and then this one will take you to the previous keyframe. So that's really valuable. Let's make his wings move as much as possible in the moment before he takes off. That will make it look like he took a big flap to get the air that he needed. That's cool, but it needs to happen a little bit faster, I think. You can grab all of these keyframes and just move them closer. That's better. That's looking more like it. All right. So he lands and he messes around on the flower and he flutters and then he takes off. We're looking better here. Okay. But I want to do a little flutter in here because he needs to get some extra wind to jump up a little higher because he's got to use that strength to push off. So I will keyframe some more wing flutters much faster. And then you just have to go back and see, and sometimes you have to mess around with it quite a bit to get something that looks decent. That's not bad at all. That's not bad. Let's watch it from the very beginning. Okay, so that's our process. We're looking for a natural movement that makes sense. You know the butterfly has to flap his wings to push the air away, and when they go down, the body will move up, and he will move in space away from the flower. While he's on the flower, he's going to track it perfectly, but he's also going to grab it and mess around and try to get some pollen. So what you want to do is go through the rest of the video. You want to, by the time you get to the 316th frame, he's on this flower. You can scale him up because he got bigger, right? At some point, you're going to move him closer. You're going to hit S and scale him up a little bit because he got closer. And so he would appear to have gotten bigger. And you're going to rotate him around so that he is, his flower is kind of facing us like this. We want to rotate him, put him right on that flower so that he's on that one. And have him land on that flower as well, have him move around, and make the flight path between the first flower and the second flower make sense over the amount of time that you have available to you. Now, when you have the animation, I'll just put him a keyframe here and raise his wings and keyframe that. At the end of the video on frame 315, 316, that's fine. You have completed your animation for the butterfly. And the only other thing we're going to do, we're going to animate the depth of field. So for your butterfly, at some point he arrived over here in this location, right? We can move that up. I'll just give you a little demo here. He arrived over here, but at some point he was still small and he was over there. And there's some keyframe before he started to move. So what you have is a space between two keyframes of movement. And you can have a bunch of keyframes in between there. It's all good. You just want to identify when he was far and when he came near. So let's see here. Frame 210. We'll select the camera and enable depth of field here. And we'll keyframe the focus distance. It's set on 8.1 feet. Now reselect your butterfly, which you can also do in the object menu. And you can go to next keyframe. Now he is near, so we will go to the camera, change the focal distance so that he is a bit blurry, and keyframe it again so that when the butterfly flies over, he becomes blurry. And let's make sure that before that he is very sharp. Yeah, 8.1 is fine. So there we have it. All right, so then when your butterfly flies over, he will be very sharp, or very blurry. That's it. So now what we want to do, you can see that what's happened is the whole video is blurry, not just the butterfly. That's okay because we didn't put this video in here as our render target. It's just in here to show us where the butterfly should go. Now we're going to do a traditional film technique called compositing, where we're just going to layer the butterfly over top of a clean version of that same footage. So at this point, if you can save, you should have saved many times before now, but you can save, and then you can just click the video, or you can select it up here in your, oh, remember, if you parented the video to the butterfly, then you will find it, we parented the video to the camera so they couldn't move separate from each other. So you may find the final example video or your video file, you may find it parented to your camera. Anyway, you can just select it, hit delete or X on your keyboard. What we have here is just our butterfly flying around in space, happy. There's one last thing actually we should do before we do that. Let's back up, Control Z until you get back to your video with the thing. Select the camera, turn off depth of field. Let's look at one more thing here. Check your lighting. When your butterfly comes in, does it look like he's really in the scene? I think maybe we could make our sun a little bit brighter. So I'm going to select the sun, go to lighting. I'll turn the strength up to 2. Make sure that you're in rendered mode. So these little circles up here, there's wireframe, that's funny. There's solid view, material view. Make sure you're in rendered view. This will show you what you're going to get. So we can make our sun much brighter, right? We can make it just that. Let's try to make it, let's make it bright. Let's make it slightly, very slightly yellow. Cool. And then now check your video throughout. See how that looks. I'm finding that the shadows are a bit dark here. I don't like how dark the shadows are. If you look at a flower that has a shadow under it like this one, you can see that the shadows are not so dark. Overall, this video is very bright. Of course, it's much brighter because the light is hitting it, making it feel brighter. Well, you can see the butterfly's shadow. The compositing will do away with that. We need to put another light in here. We'll put another sun. A sun is just a directional, even light. If you remember, if you hold Shift and hit right click, you'll move the 3D cursor around. I'm going to put it so that the light will be over here. Shift A, add a light, a sun. R to rotate, Y on the Y axis. You can see that sun is now lighting up the butterfly, right? H to hide, Alt H to come back, lighting up the butterfly underneath. And we'll make it, let's see, will blue help us? You would think that the fill light like this should be from the sky. But if you look at the flowers, the fill feels very non-color because the orangeness of the flower is still very present. So we'll just make it be white. And the strength, maybe it doesn't need to be that strong, 0.6. Yeah. So material preview shows us without it. Interesting. Interesting. So pan through your video and see, does it feel, when it gets over here, it feels good. And I have, of course, not put enough keyframes in here, so there should be a lot more movement in here for your video, but right now we're just looking at the lighting. I think that it's okay now. I think it's okay, so we'll just leave it like that. So let's go back to, let's go ahead and move forward with the rest of this, which is to composite the butterfly in front of the video. So we'll select our video, we'll delete it, delete, okay. We have our butterfly. Now let's go up to compositing. So Blender can do compositing for us, and we're going to use Blender for our compositing today. In Blender's default compositing view, you'll see render layers. That's whatever you render. You'll see composite, and by default, denoise is plugged in. We're not going to need that, so just click it, type X. That will delete the denoise node, and we'll click on the image from render layers and drag it over to image from composite. That will give us whatever we render is what we get, which is super cool. So now if we type F12 or we go up here to render image, then we get as our final output a picture of a butterfly. That's great. We don't want that to have this gray background. We want that to be transparent so that we can see through it to put our flowers back there. So the first thing we're going to do, close that. We'll go up here, make sure we're in the first tab, Render Properties, and we will go down to Film, click Transparent, and then if we hit F12 again, we will render, you see this checkerboard pattern tells us that we're seeing through into the behind the render, which is great. So now what we can do, we can also, in our composite view with these nodes, we can have a little viewer node that will show us what that's going to look like. I'm going to type Shift-A, type search. You don't have to look through all these menu items to find the thing. Just type search and type viewer, and you'll get a viewer node. You can run your image also into the viewer node, and in the background, you will see what the current render is. And if you haven't done a render yet, you'll see nothing. If you type F12, you'll get an updated render. You can zoom the background as well. Arbitrarily, it's V to zoom it out and Alt V to zoom it in. And you can hold Alt and middle mouse click to move it around. So you can see what you're getting there. Now what we want to do is to layer in that video. So Shift-A, search, image, right there, open our Flowers 1 video. How many frames do we want to use? 316. And we can go have that right there. We're all ready to go. So what we're going to do, in an image that has transparency, that's referred to as the alpha. It's a measurement from 0 to 100. For every pixel in the image, is it opaque, like where the butterfly is, or is it transparent, like where the nothing is? We're going to use that alpha to make sure that we only see flowers where the butterfly is not. That will make it look like the butterfly is in front of the video. So Shift-A, search for an alpha over node. So alpha this over that, right? So we'll plug the image of the video into the top one, which seems funny, but it is. We'll plug the render image into the bottom one. And for the factor, how do we know where to show butterfly and where to show flowers? Well, the alpha of the render layer. Anywhere there is not something rendered, anywhere it is transparent, show the flowers. So we take the alpha, we click on it, we drag it up to factor. The factor is, so let's look for a second. Do a render, F12, great. If we move the factor, then if it was on 0, it would give us just the flowers. Oh, it's not outputting. Okay, from the alpha over, drag image into viewer, and also drag it into composite, right? So now, factor, right? Factor 1, we're seeing butterfly. Factor 0, we are seeing just the flowers. We want the factor for that to be driven by the render layer. So we'll put that into there. That should give us what we want, which is the butterfly over top of the render of the video. Sweet. So that's it. Video, render, alpha over, da 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 da. We should be ready to render out our video, which is great. We can just page through here, make sure we're getting some different stuff. Yeah, very good. So now you're ready to render a video. Come up here to, there's render properties. We can turn render and viewport. This is like if we were making a complex 3D scene, we would want to up these as far as we can. For us, our scene has like maybe a dozen polygons in it, no volumetrics, 2 lights, and 99% of the data is coming from the picture of the butterfly and the picture that's coming from the video. So we can turn this down to 1. It's not going to mess up our quality. And we can go to the second tab, which is output. It looks like a little printer. And make sure it's 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second. 316 is our end frame. That should already be set. For output, Blender likes to output to a temp folder that no one has ever wanted to output before. I'm just going to output to my desktop. You output wherever you want. If we were going to make, so the next thing we have to do is, what are we outputting? Is it just a picture, like when I push F12? That's just a picture. If we were going to make a really long video and we needed to do a really long render, like it was going to take 8 hours overnight, then we would probably tell it to output frames. We would tell it every frame of this video, all 316 frames, make a PNG, a picture. And then when it's all done, we'll just put them together in a video editing software, 30 frames per second, it looks like a video, great. That way, let's say we got 75% of the way through our render overnight and it messes up. Well, if we are rendering frames, all the frames it did render, we've still got. If we were making a video, the video would be unusable because it would be a corrupted video file. For our video today, it's a very short video and it's unlikely that it's going to mess up. We're just going to make a video file. So select PNG and then select the one that says video. It's FFmpeg video. For encoding, make it an MP4 instead of a Matroska. MP4 standard video. H.264 is good. Medium quality, let's set it to high quality. And so select your folder, FFmpeg video, MP4, high quality. No audio, there's no sound. Now, if we go up here, you can save here, is good. Render animation. And that will render your video. So what you'll see is that the butterfly is moving around and the video is videoing. And when it finishes, you will have your video in your folder and should look good. So let's, I've already got this. So let's go to the final video just to check it out. So what you should get is this right here, your animation of the butterfly moving around, and it should look pretty good. So we'll be going over this in class extensively and having lots of time to work on it, but you can always refer back to this video for the specifics, and I may as well. So I look forward to seeing you there, and as always, if you have any questions or issues, please reach out to me via email or on the Discord, and I'll help you as much as I can. Thanks.